The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in the cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to RAP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts,
Kim Purvis
and Allison Robinson. Make sure to check us out on our Facebook pages, RAP Paranormal and Friends and RAP Paranormal Busters, for up-to-date show information and events. Hey everyone, welcome to another night of RAP Paranormal and Friends. We have a special guest for you tonight, and it's been a little while since we've done this, but before I let you know who it is, I'm going to give a little introduction here. So, we're going to be discussing his book, Mire. And this is a story of Paul Nugent's own spiritual quest to discover the universal journey we are all making. And have been since the beginning of time. And which is meaning embracing alien worlds, higher and lower dimensions of reality, and living galaxies. So please welcome Paul Nugent to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, Alison. Thank you very much for inviting me onto your show. And I look forward to talking a little bit more about if I may say, Mire.
Yes, it's hard. You want to say the R's.
Yeah, you know what? We don't pronounce the R's. Maya, M-A-Y-A, is a Sanskrit word for illusion.
Yes.
And Maya is the quagmire. Uh-huh. So the title comes from the sort of quagmire of illusion in which I believe humanity finds itself, or doesn't even find itself, it's lost in this Maya.
Gotcha. Yes, I know. It is very hard because you want to pronounce the R's in there, even though you're really not pronouncing it.
Well, there's no R in the first one.
No, there's not.
No.
Now, in your book, you talk about George King. Now, for our listeners, who is George King?
I do talk about George King. In fact, without George King, there wouldn't be any book at all. Mm-hmm. George King, like myself, was English. He was born in a county called Shropshire in 1919. 20 years later, 1939, of course, was the beginning of what is now known as the Second World War. Being 20 years of age, he was of prime fighting age. However, he knew from intuition and instinct and his own upbringing that thou shalt not kill is a law. Whatever the circumstance, situation, we're not here on earth to kill each other. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time he could recognize that Hitler and Nazism was an evil force, an aggressor, mm-hmm. And something to be counteracted. And so, as a consequence of his intuitive sense, but at the same time recognizing that it was something to be combated, he joined the fire service, the fire brigade in London, where we did. And I subscribe to the concept that nothing happens by chance, but German bombs fell on the city of London, killing civilians. In what became known as the Blitz, and there was a natural, therefore, retaliation of that, where civilians, you can, to that extent, innocent people, certainly non-fighting people, were drawn into this war, and he witnessed firsthand the horror and the madness and the total inhumanity of that, complete inhumanity, and rushing into buildings that were collapsing on babies, elderly people. Complete madness, and it drove him to ask why are humans doing this to each other, and that led him to practice the ancient science of yoga. Yoga being a Sanskrit word, like Mire, M-A-Y-A, is a Sanskrit word, which literally means union. And he practiced various forms of yoga, primarily yoga breathing, known as pranayama, mantra yoga, hatha yoga, different forms of yoga, that resulted in him attaining what is known as the goal of yoga, which is a complete rise of a force that we all have at the base of the spine called the Kundalini. And when you invoke it in this very intense way, and he was doing this for 8 hours a day over a 10-year period, so as I say, he was very, very focused, very intense. It opens what are known as the chakras, again to use a Sanskrit word, we would call them psychic centers in our aura. In the solar plexus center, the heart center, the throat center, the cry center, and ultimately the crown center. And when one raises this force, known as the Kundalini, through these centers, opening them up, one becomes enlightened, so to speak. It's a state we would argue that the Buddha attained, that Jesus attained, Sri Krishna attained, various masters who upon earth throughout our history have attained. And with it comes complete realization of the totality of everything, the oneness of everything, the unity of everything, hence the word yoga meaning union. It's a state of absolute bliss. It's a state of having access to all knowledge, because one knows all things. Where if one puts one's mind on something, one knows it. One can look at you and know who you are, your past lives, and who you will be in your future lives. It's that state. And Dr. King attained this coming out of the Second World War. As I said, it took him 10 years, which had led to the Cold War. And the Cold War went even further than the Second World War. Second World War, of course, culminating with the detonation of atom bombs upon the human race. But the Cold War went further with the development of the hydrogen bomb, which was infinitely more threatening and deadly to humanity. And it was also a time of relatively intense flying saucer sightings. It was that period. It was actually the period when the term flying saucer was actually coined by an American aviator called Kenneth Arnold, who saw discs in Washington State that resembled upturned saucers. That's why he called them flying saucers. Because our understanding, George King, with this ability to go into this very elevated state of yogic consciousness or cosmic consciousness, in 1954, again during the height of this Cold War, was contacted by one of these alien beings inhabiting the higher dimension of other planets, or in this case Venus. Who contacted him, and this intelligence went by the name of Aetherius, hence he founded the Aetherius Society, because I guess coming back to your original question, who is George King? So George King developed himself as a master of yoga, who became contacted by far more evolved, intelligent beings inhabiting the higher dimensions, not only of our own planet, but other planets within our own solar system, who had witnessed this downfall and this involution of humanity over a period of more than 18 million years. So that will hopefully kind of try to answer your initial question.
Yes, it does. Now, tying into that, where do these cosmic masters come from, and what are they wanting?
Very good questions. In terms of where they're coming from, our understanding, when I say our understanding, I'm implying the understanding of the Aetherius Society, but by no means are we alone in this. I mean, this is Eastern mysticism in its essence and purity. Recognizes two fundamental laws, one of which is the law of karma, as taught by all great masters, including Christ, who taught, as you sow, so must you reap. The Buddha taught it, action and reaction are opposite and equal. But without tying that into the other law of reincarnation, neither make a whole heap of sense. I mean, if it's going to be an eternal hell or an eternal heaven, given by the margin of because, oh, geez, I shouldn't have said that, it's kind of ridiculous. But so when we die, based upon how we have lived that life, according to the law of karma, we develop a certain vibration, a certain frequency to which we go when we die. And that's either a so-called higher realm of frequency or a lower. If we've essentially fundamentally been a good person who's naturally helped people, been kind, been generous, all those things, our karmic pattern will vibrate us to a higher vibration of frequency. If we've been, dare I say, a drug pusher, a petty criminal, or even a major criminal, that vibration that we've created will vibrate to a lower astral realm. And this has been going on since the beginning of time, you could say. And so in terms of these other beings, they've evolved themselves, where cosmic consciousness, that state to which Dr. George King attained, that really, if you like, they've never gone below that. And we should never have gone below that. We did, which ties into the story of Mire. But so they're coming from the higher frequencies, the higher dimensions of other planets within our own solar system and beyond. I mean, this is the great change that humanity's on, because prior to sort of telescopes, and particularly the James Webb Space Telescope and the previous one, we've tended to think, as per Galileo, Galileo broke that myth, but that we were the center of the universe and everything revolved around us. We can now realize how infinitely small and even in a certain way insignificant we are. But in the grand scheme, there's nothing that's insignificant, because it's all part of a universal oneness and wholeness. So these beings come from other dimensions of the other planets. And the reason why it ties in, why they care or whatever, ties in with the fact that everything is part of a universal oneness. And like a concerned parent, it pains them to see that a child, not that we're necessarily their child, we aren't, but we're part of that same universal oneness, if you like. It pains them to see us suffer when that suffer need not be the case. And so they're here and have communicated through Dr. George King and others, and have visited us throughout our history to help awaken, to help enlighten humanity.
Now, going on with this, now you talk about him a lot in your book, but what drew you to his teachings?
My own pursuit of truth. my own desire to understand, which was driven, I would say, and would say, out of my own concern. I could be oblivious to the perils and misery and crime and sadness and everything in our world, but they concerned me, and they still do concern me, and I'd like to think that they could and would, concern all of us, and so I just felt sort of driven and compelled to understand it, such that I could do something about it.
Now, what was your first encounter like, or interaction with Dr. King? How did that go? Like, what was that like?
Well, I came across the Aetherius Society in England in probably about 1984. And when you come across the Aetherius Society, you come across this man who'd founded the organization, the master of yoga, Dr. George King. He was living in Los Angeles ever since 1959. So he wasn't around. I just heard of him from everybody else who did know of him, who was already in the organization. And it wasn't until the following year, 1985, that I saw him for the first time. This was a place known as Holdstone Down in Devonshire. And by which time, I'd spent a year or more sort of investigating the Aetherius Society. I was, seriously curious about it as an organization. I knew that there was something inherently good about the Aetherius Society. So I saw Dr. George King on this hilltop, as I say, known as Holdstone Down, but didn't have a face-to-face interaction. And over the course of the following year or more, I came to learn more about the Aetherius Society. It resonated more deeply and truthfully with me, such that I joined in 1986. I became a member. A year or two later, I joined the voluntary staff, whereby we get more and more one's time to help this cause, because I fully believed in this cause. And then in early 1989, it was generally put out that Dr. King may not live for a great deal longer. And having joined the staff in England, in London, but not having met him, I felt a very strong sort of need to go and meet him. If he's not going to live long, I'm, here in the Aetherius Society and joining the staff, I need to go meet this guy.
Right.
This man. So I did. I went on a 3-week visit to the American headquarters, as they say, actually in Hollywood, California. Specifically to meet him, because I knew it would be important to me, based on how I'd chosen to dedicate my life. And I did meet him. And what was it like? It was the next stage in a fundamental changing in my whole life, because part of the consequence of that visit, apart from actually physically in face-to-face meeting him, which was a wonderful experience for any so-called disciple to meet their so-called master, where you put tremendous faith in this individual, as I had, and it wasn't a blind faith. It was based on putting it between my teeth and biting it and testing it. So it was it was very elevating, because to me, karmically, I'd met my master. I mean, if I was to put myself out on a limb, and I'm happy to go on this limb, but I mean, if I was someone in the time of Jesus Christ who kind of recognized Christ when the world didn't, and the world, if anything, wants to persecute him, but to me, I believed this man. I believed what he was saying. I saw what he was doing. It was profoundly meaningful to me, and it was important for me to meet this individual. If only from from a karmic point of view, because I'm dealing with something very great here, truly great. Great not in the human sense of how we sort of treat celebrity and all the rest of it. No. This is great in the true meaning of life, and all that means. So I'd met him. So it was very life changing in that sense. But as you will have read from the book, while I was there on that 3-week visit, I was given the opportunity to actually relocate to the American headquarters of the Aetherius Society, which I did. Which actually, life comes with tests and challenges, because when I returned to London, there was my boss kind of standing at the front door of the office saying, "Hey, Paul, I was working in the wine trade. I want to make you a director of the firm and give you 10% of the firm of its worth," which was a huge temptation.
Right.
It was a test. It was a challenge, and I was very fond of my boss. And he unfortunately died a few years ago, and it was very sad for me, because he was a wonderful human being too. But it was kind of a karmic spiritual test. Paul, what do you want? How meaningful are these cosmic spiritual teachings of the Aetherius Society and Dr. King versus material temptation? And I was, if you like, strong enough or wise enough or sensible enough or whatever it was to reject the so-called temptation and go with that higher truth, which I did. That's how I wound up actually becoming a personal assistant to Dr. George King in 1992.
Yes, that was my next question. I was going to ask you, how did you become his personal assistant? But you just kind of led into that. Now, what were the core principles or teachings of this society of Dr. King?
Well, the core principles again come back to ancient yogic principles of karma and reincarnation. Everything has significance. We're not here by chance. There's nothing random. And when we're able to see it clearly, it's a beautiful, exquisite, divine experience that we all have in life, of literally being. Hence the great sort of cliche of being here now, because it is. Where is it from? What's it all about? It is literally an exquisite experience, but we don't live it that way, and it's not understood in that way. And because we don't see it, live it, and understand it that way, we've become a very divided, broken world in so many different ways. So the core principles are karma, action and reaction play out for all of us. As you sow, so shall you. So in other words, if you want to have a happy, fulfilled life, be kind, be happy, be generous, be giving, and that will come back to you as a natural law. Not, as I say, culminating just with death when it all becomes meaningless, but there's a purpose for it. Beyond why do we reincarnate? We reincarnate because we do have a higher purpose. That higher purpose being to attain cosmic consciousness, or nirvana, as the Buddha taught. But even that is not the end. In fact, I see that as actually being the beginning. That's the real beginning. We on Earth haven't really yet begun. Because with the experience of cosmic consciousness, this very elevated state known as samadhi, we then ascend. We then experience what Christ demonstrated for all and for every one of us. Ascension. But ascension to what? Not some permanent mythical heaven, but higher stages of evolution, leading us on to other dimensions of frequency on the other planets within our own solar system. And this is still, in the grand scheme, a relatively elementary. We go on, this was part of the teaching that came through Dr. George King, beyond interplanetary existence comes solar existence. and this ties in with another essential sort of core teaching of the Ethereal Society, in this universal sense of oneness, is that everything is living, everything is alive, everything has consciousness, everything is evolving. And that includes the planet, the Mother Earth. It includes all of the planets. It includes the sun. It includes the whole solar system and the whole galaxy. They're all living. They all have consciousness. They're all part of this one universal divinity that we would term as God, if you like, and all with the fundamental purpose of attaining to higher and higher levels of consciousness and realization. We're on this incredible journey. We've so dumbed it down that we've become lost and blind to its whole fundamental purpose. But we're here to evolve and to attain to higher and higher levels of consciousness. And the energy driving it, and the energy behind it all, is the energy of love. That is ultimately, well, not even ultimately, that's totally what it's really all about. It's coming back to why do these other beings care? They care because everything is an aspect of it. Cruelty to animals, cruelty to anything, destruction of anything, mindlessness, all pain. Give pain, if you like, to a more intelligent, more evolved individual. And when one's incredibly evolved, such as these beings are on the higher dimensions of other planets, it gives them tremendous pain to see how we treat each other, how we treat ourselves, how we treat our planet, how we treat our environment, everything, because they are conscious of its universality and its singularity.
So
the Earth is a living being. Coming back to principles.
Yes. Now, why do you think all this information right here is important in today's society?
Because I think we're very lost, and I think we're very broken, and I think we're very, as I see the world, and I don't think I'm unique by any stretch of the imagination, I don't see a happy world.
No, I don't either.
Does not make me happy. I don't wake up with joy. I don't wake up with a heart full of gladness.
Right.
I know that right as we're speaking, there's the Democratic Convention going on, which is nice to see someone like Kamala Harris, although I don't want to venture into politics at all, but at least the concept of joy is coming back into the conversation. Joy should be our experience on Earth.
Right.
And it evidently isn't. There's a tremendous, even in the United States, which is allegedly the richest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, all I really see and hear are reports of how people are struggling, struggling to pay rent, how rents are astronomical, inflation, paying bills, medical expenses, yada, 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 yada.
Right.
Different pandemics, and you see it. You've got to walk much beyond your own doorstep to see it in the world. So, remind me of that question.
I was just asking why you think the information that Dr. King has come up with his society. How do you think it's important in today's society?
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Because despite the convention going on and the whole election in the United States coming up in a few months' time, it's not a political crisis. We're not living out a politics is not, whoever gets elected, they're not going to really solve very much, in my view. It's not an economic problem. It's not even a social problem, despite the myriad of social problems that we have. It's fundamentally a spiritual crisis. It's a spiritual crisis because we've lost that sense of identity as to who and what we really are and what we are a part of. As somebody put it very well, Saint-Exupéry, I believe. We're not human beings having occasional spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having occasional human experiences. And we've lost that sense of awe as to what we really are a part of. That's been lost. It's been dumbed down, and so I think that these teachings are so critically needed, and it's a major. It's one of the main reasons that I've written this book, is to bring back a sense of inspiration, a sense of realization, a sense of understanding of what this whole gig is really all about, and how misconstrued we've made it or allowed it to become. So that's why I to me it's why I've dedicated my life to it, because it's. I don't enjoy seeing suffering. I don't enjoy seeing ignorance. I don't actually, to be really honest with you, I don't really enjoy living in this world the way we're living it.
Right, yeah, I agree.
Knowing how different it can and could and even, dare I say, should be. And I believe will be. But it requires this total shift in understanding. Bigger than pop, bigger than everything. It goes to the very core of who we are as spiritual beings, as human beings.
Right. I agree with that all too, because I think our world right now is a very sad world. I just, I don't see anybody that's, happy living in the times that we have. So I agree with
and
that.
it's a sort of fake happiness. Yeah. Well, I've heard that happiness is laughter of the mind, and joy is happiness of the soul. And there may be a bit of sort of happiness, having a good time, yada yada yada. But there isn't a great deal of laughter of the soul going on.
No, I agree with that. Now, going back to Dr. King, would you be willing to share like a memorable experience from your time working with him?
Yes, I would. I mean, there's several instances, but to sort of, if you like, convey the point of how unusual he was. I hadn't been at the American headquarters for very long. And anyway, he called me into his office, and he asked if I would. He was going away to a place in Utah, on the border of Utah and Arizona, called Lake Powell. And he called me into his office to ask because I was staying back, if I would stay in his apartment, in his home, while he was gone, just if you like, with security. And naturally he said, yes, we have to do that, Master. And I remember as I was sort of turned to leave the office, he said, and you can use the bedroom, which I thought was, that's nice, and I'm sure I hadn't even ever been in his bedroom. So anyway, a few days later, he left to go to Lake Powell, and I went across the street where I was living at the time to get my mattress and whatever, and bring it over, put it down in his own home, in the bed, and I went into the bedroom. I thought, well, it's the master's bedroom. Anyway, later that night or that evening, it's time to go to bed. I remember I watched his TV for a bit. It all felt kind of strange. I did feel like an intruder.
Right.
But I knew I wasn't an intruder. I'd been invited in. And I was on my own. And when I went to bed, I remember I read for a bit. And I remember then I turned out the light, obviously, put my head on the pillow, ready to go to sleep. And within moments of closing my eyes, my mind entered outer space.
Wow.
It was very, I won't say it was difficult to describe, but it was difficult to comprehend. I literally, I won't say I'd entered the state of cosmic consciousness, but the vastness. And I think, and then I shut down because part of my mind, sort of my conscious mind said, I can't handle this. It's too big. And I shut down. but it enabled me in hindsight to see number one, where his mind would go at night, or not. That's where his natural mind was, in that vastness, in that state of cosmic consciousness. And I think that's why, as I was leaving, he said, "Oh, you can use the bedroom." I think it was his way of sort of he knew I would have an experience.
Or yeah.
And it was just a little way of a master thanking me for doing him a small favor.
Wow.
So yeah, and that was by no means the only experience, but unquestionably, we believe in the Aetherius Society that Dr. King was not of this earth. We believe, like Jesus, like Buddha, and these are very strong claims to make. I mean, we try Mire, research the Aetherius Society, and you, chances are, you'll come to the same conclusion. These beings have come to humanity at a critical time in our evolution for a very specific reason, to give us the impetus and the teaching that we need to create that shift. And I think that's who George King was and why he has come at this time.
Okay. Very good, very good. Now, we do have a question in chat from Allie. She said that she's heard souls from other universes have come here to raise the vibration of our universe, and she would like to know what your thoughts are on that.
Who am I to dispute it? It comes back to this sense of universal oneness. Although in saying that, we would certainly say in the Aetherius Society that not all beings throughout the universe are benevolent. There are alien intelligences, which I talk about in the book, that are kind of robotic. They're technologically very advanced, but they're not spiritually advanced. It's the same as in the lower astral realms. I mean, the dark forces, so to speak, are very manipulative and very cunning, and they don't have, our best interests, at heart by any stretch of the imagination. It's very important for us to become aware of this, because why is the human race in the state it's in? We've allowed ourselves to be ensnared by malevolent but clever intelligences with a small I, certainly not in an advanced spiritual evolved way. But we're all suspect to that. But in answer to Ali's question, yes, absolutely sure. I mean, there are wonderful, highly advanced, evolved beings of light throughout this galaxy and beyond this galaxy. I mean, this galaxy is one of billions of galaxies, who want to come and share their wisdom and their vibrations, the more evolved vibrations, with us, helping to lift us up. Yes, for sure.
Very good question, Allie, and thank you for answering that question for her. Now, going back to Dr. King, I'm sure that there has been a lot of skepticism against him. You've probably heard it or come across it. How do you handle that? How do you respond to that, the skeptics?
Yeah, well, I mean, if in Dr. King and the Aetherius Society claim that we, Jesus, or not even someone like Jesus, Jesus and the Buddha came from the higher dimensions of another world, that it is inevitably going to be met at best with skepticism. And beyond that, ridicule and laughter. And yes, the Aetherius Society has encountered that. There's a wonderful yoga master called Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, who's a disciple of Swami Ramakrishna. And, there's one of the things that Swami Vivekananda said that I like very much, He said, lies go with the wind. Truth can go against the wind. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it's easy in a very simplistic, uninvestigated way to dismiss all this with ridicule and laughter and say, George King's got to be a crank, talking about beings from other worlds. And it's still, to a lesser extent than it was, dismissed as being ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Fortunate concept of flying saucers, now called unidentified aerial phenomena, mm-hmm. is actually having to be addressed by this government and other governments, because mm-hmm. these things are being seen by very credible people. You can't just dismiss it. Right. Crop circles are showing up. It's not two drunken guys in the middle of the night with a plank of wood. It's far too clever and sophisticated for that. So we're being forced mm-hmm. to address these things. Mm-hmm. And in terms of lies going with the wind, truth can go against the wind. For the intelligent thinking person, mm-hmm. rather than just dismiss it as being absurd and ridiculous, mm-hmm. Something within them, an intuitive sense, will say, well, hold on, I actually want to check this out, because they will already have a sense that this could indeed be true. I mean, I think, if you take it back to someone like Christ, he was dismissed and ridiculed by the Pharisees and whatever the other ones were called, mm-hmm. Sadducees. The orthodoxy of its day wanted to dismiss it because it threatened the establishment. Mm-hmm. And the establishment does not like being threatened, so it seeks to ridicule and dismiss and whatever. Same was indeed the case with George King. But I think for the more intelligent, more sort of awakened person, they will have an intuitive sense that something about this actually sounds right, mm-hmm. sounds true. I want to know more. I want to investigate it, and they will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they can't deny it anymore. I mean, there have been actual people in the military and everything coming out talking about these UAPs and everything. So, I mean, they can't keep it a secret forever.
They can't. They're on a losing wicket, as we say in English.
Right. Yeah. Now, where can our listeners read or purchase your book, Mire?
Well, I hope they will. Mm-hmm. It's available on Amazon, needless to say. Mm-hmm. And so if they just go to Amazon and type in Mire, Mayamire, mm-hmm. it will show up, and they can order a copy. It's actually, and they will be ahead of the mass. They'll be ahead of the curve, because it's actually not. You're very good, Alison. This book has not even yet been published. It's not published until September the 1st. Mm-hmm. But at this stage of the game, or otherwise, they're welcome to go to their local bookstore uh-huh. and say, "Hey guys, have you got a copy of Mire? I want a copy of Mire."
That's
and
right.
But the bookseller will give them a blank stare. But anyway, for right now, Amazon is the place to go.
Perfect.
There you go.
Now, do you have a website or anything, or social media, that if anybody wants to reach out, has any more questions, they can contact you?
They can. I'm Paul Nugent on Facebook, but no doubt with a number of other Paul Nugents. I do have a website. which is sedimentofmysoul.com, all one word, sediment of my soul. But also go to the Aetherius Society, aetherius.org, AETHERIUS.org. Go to drgeorgeking.org, and you will find all the information that you're seeking at this time.
Very cool. Well, you provided us with a lot of information. I knew nothing of this George King until I got a hold of your book. So that was very interesting. Also, I'm into extraterrestrials, other beings, other life forms, other higher powers than us. So it was very inspiring, very spiritual. And I thank you for giving us all the information that you have. And I thank all of our listeners for tuning in tonight. And please be on the lookout. You can check Amazon, but if you want to get a hard copy or anything like that, wait till after September 1st, and I'm sure it will be in a bookstore near you. So, Mire, make sure you check it out. I will post his information on our social media as well. And thank you, Paul, for being on and taking time out of your night to give us this information and letting us experience all your knowledge on your book, Mire.
Thank you very much, Alison. It was a great pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. Until next time, everybody. Peace out.